All right, how's it going, everyone? This is the 1 month update. Yes, we've reached the 1 month update of building our Ryan home St. Lawrence and moving in and actually living in it. And in this video, I'm going to cover a few different things. So of course, I want to talk about what took place after our final inspection and walkthrough and once we closed on the home, which was in late March and early April. But I also want to talk about what our experience has been like living in our new home thus far. Because while we did close on March 31st, we didn't actually move in and start living at it here until May 3rd. So talk about the experience of actually being here in the community, any warranty requests and repairs we put in, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned previously, we had our final inspection and walkthrough with our PM on Friday, March 28th. In fact, we have an entire long video on the channel covering this process. That is the week 18 build video, which it's a good one and definitely a thorough one. So if you haven't seen that yet, I will leave a link to that above and in the description below that you can check out. So that took place on March 28th, and then we closed on the home the following Monday after, March 31st. And really, once that happens, it's very non-ceremonial, at least in terms of if you go through NVR and Ryan's title process. And Ryan's main objective for that closing day in terms of any homeowner activities is mainly for you to get the utilities transferred into your name so you can begin covering the costs of that moving forward. So I know for some people, they may be curious as to what utilities on a house like this looks like. Of course, this is a St. Lawrence model, first and second levels, and we do have a fully finished basement level, so totaling around 4,300 finished square feet. So if you're wondering what utilities on a house like this are like, and we truly weren't exactly sure either ourselves. So when it comes to gas, our provider is South Jersey Gas for this region. And in this case, we are spending around $100 a month on a gas bill. Not too uncommon and frankly kind of within the range, I think, of what we expected. Gas in this case covers our range and cooking from the kitchen, covers our tankless water heater, our furnace, etc. Now on the electricity side, and our provider here is Atlantic City Electric, this was truly surprising to us. So our electric bill comes out to, at this point, for this house, maybe a little over $100 a month, anywhere from maybe $110 to $120. And the shocking thing here is Ariel and I, in our previous apartment, which was a 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath unit, spent more on electricity, sometimes I would say as much as 1.5 to 2 times as much on that apartment as we do here in this 4,300 square foot house. Now, technically, it's a different provider, slightly different region. We're about a half an hour away, slightly more south here in New Jersey. But needless to say, I think there is something to be said for a well-insulated home. Maybe some of the different materials Ryan uses in terms of the low E coating on windows and how that can block out and help maybe reflect sunlight in some of those harsher conditions, depending on what exposure your house has. I overall expected we'd be paying a lot more on the electricity side, so this has been certainly a pleasant surprise. Now, adjacent to electricity, Xfinity or Comcast is really the only game in town as far as internet services. We're paying $65 a month for a 1,300 megabit plan. No other additional services for TV or phone or anything, and pretty reasonable and tracks with about what I would expect. Now, when it comes to water and sewer, and yes, we are on public water and sewer, and Aqua is our provider here, this was a surprise and maybe not in the best way, at least initially. So when we got that initial bill, which ran us, I want to say around $315, maybe 50 of that being sewer-related costs, we definitely noticed that our water bill seemed a bit high, and certainly a lot higher than I think we would have expected. Bear in mind, this is only Ariel and I in the home here, and between us washing our hands, showering, or cooking, and using the faucet there, didn't seem like it warranted nearly that much of a cost compared to how we were using it. So to transition our way into talking about what the culprit was for that higher water bill, we should talk about one of the things that took place from the process of when we closed on the home to when we moved in. And that was the installation of our lawn, our landscaping package, and our irrigation system. So in this particular community, Ryan was doing sodded front and side lawns with seed in the rear. And when it comes to a landscaping package, you'll certainly see some shots here of what this looks like for us. A variety of different shrubs and little plants and a couple beds of mulch throughout different parts of the front of the exterior. Now, fun fact, if you're wondering if there's any rhyme or reason here as to the different shrubs they pick or consistency in what they choose or the design between other homes, I would say this is sort of a mixed bag. Looking across the different homes here and even other St. Lawrence's in the community, I've seen different shrubs and different mulch bed designs used, at least for some of the homes and elevations compared to others. So as far as this goes, I think you get what you get, and truly if you have a green thumb or want to hire a landscaper and do some extra work there, that is going to be your prerogative. but I wouldn't expect too much more there. Now, while the seed in the rear, of course, is taking its time growing in, and we could probably water it a bit more, but it is getting there. The sod certainly has grown in nicely and been looking fresh, and that is in large part due to the added irrigation system that Ryan installed. So again, very surprising to us, Ryan decided to put an irrigation system in with the homes in this particular community. That is, in my opinion, an extreme rarity, even just to offer as an option for a builder like Ryan, but no complaints. We are certainly happy they did it. Now, if you're wondering what that system consists of, that is a Hunter X2 controller with a bunch of Rainbird 5000 sprinkler heads split up into different zones and groups across the front and sides of the home. Bear in mind, they did not put any sprinklers in the rear for the seated area. That is going to be left up to owners to do or extend if they'd like. And all this work took place within the span of a few days in mid-late April, so around 2 to 3 weeks after we closed on the home. But to go full circle on the water bill costs, one of the things we had asked our PM was, how are they going to program the system? What dates, times are they going to run it? And, his response essentially at the time was, well, don't worry about it. They're going to set it up for a nice generic program, but it should keep everything nice and green and looking fresh. When I went to dig through the Hunter X2 menu and see what this was set to, which I will say, very good system, but far from intuitive to program and navigate, so do your due diligence in looking that up or poking through the manual if you need to. In our case, this system was set to water our lawn every day for 2 different programs, each for 30 minutes. So basically, pretty much throughout the front and sides of our home, every day we were getting a solid hour of watering our lawn. And, sure, this is great, of course, for keeping the sod nice and fresh and helping it grow. But truthfully, this was probably a lot more than we needed and was definitely the main cause of our higher water bill. So in this case, I ended up paring the programming back to go every other day, essentially Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday for what would be, in this case, 20-minute intervals. So rather than 30 minutes and a total of 40 minutes per day rather than an hour. We'll see how this shakes out in time in terms of reducing our water bill. And of course, there will be a number of months where we won't be running this anyway in the winter. But needless to say, if you're getting an irrigation system installed and you're just trusting the builder or contractor to program everything and for that to be all good to go, you might want to double check that because you might be paying for a bit more watering and a lot more water than your lawn might need. But I think overall, the lower utility costs have been a pleasant surprise, especially on a house of this size, and so no complaints there. Now really, as I mentioned, the installation of the lawn, landscaping, and irrigation system was really the only thing that took place with the home within that month period of us closing and moving in. So beyond that, it was really up to us to just get all our things in order, pack up a couple U-Hauls, big shout out to my dad and our friend Mark who helped us along the way, and get everything ready for the new place. Now in that month period that we were moving in, and frankly even a little bit after we did move in, we did have a number of other purchases and things that we did do for the new home. So we did not get a refrigerator or washer or dryer from Ryan. They had a package that offered a fridge that was really more than we needed, and frankly a washer and dryer that was not up to par with what we wanted. And this would have cost around $5,000. So we went the route of picking a fridge, washer, and dryer that we preferred from Home Depot and got that delivered and installed. In this case, given Ryan chose GE appliances for the remainder of the home, we went with a GE side-by-side fridge with water and ice maker, and a front-load washer and dryer that is essentially the same model we had in our most recent apartment that we really liked and had a good experience with. Now overall, with the delivery and install process and everything from Home Depot, this totaled up to around $3,000 or maybe a little more, $3,100 or so when all is said and done. In this case, it does take a little bit more time and effort, of course, to coordinate and purchase, but I do think it is worth it. You will save likely thousands in the process and probably get to pick something that's maybe a little more to your taste, especially if the default options from Ryan aren't to your liking. Now, fun fact for anyone doing an install from someone like Home Depot, I did find their installers pretty amenable to helping set up some additional things. That includes a split that I'd done off of the ice maker line for the fridge to also accommodate a plumbed-in setup for our Keurig machine. So no more filling water reservoirs regularly for a quick cup of coffee. That is maybe a topic to cover in another video at some point here. Also, something worth getting, at least from Home Depot, is you can pay a penny. And if you do pay for that and you have a front load washer and dryer, the installer should be able to orient your door configuration such that you can easily pass laundry to and from the washer and dryer without the doors getting in the way. Kind of a nice little thing, but something most people don't think about. And yes, if you don't pay for that penny, they might not do it on the spot. Now, beyond the fridge, washer, and dryer, there were a couple of other big purchases we made that are, I would say, not uncommon for any new home or new home build. One of those, of course, being the cost for blinds or shades. So in this case, we went with Blinds to Go and did basically sort of a more expedited process where they handle everything. So they did an in-house consult, an install, measurement. They brought a bunch of samples. They came back, did a separate formal final measurement of everything, and then did the install maybe a couple weeks later. 33 windows or glass doors and a little over $5,000 later, and well, our house has window coverings. Now, of course, you could measure and purchase and install all of these yourself. I know there's some people out there even cutting their own blinds and doing things to that extent. I have installed shades and curtains before. It's not too big of a lift, but quite frankly, we wanted to just keep a couple things off of our plate to make the move a little more manageable. So that was something we were willing to pay a bit more for to have it handled. Overall, I think they did a really good job. We did mostly faux wooden blinds and sort of a white on the vast majority of windows, but also did some roller shades in a couple rooms like Ariel's office and our owner's bedroom. And that does make a nice difference because you get sort of a lot of natural daylight with a translucent covering that helps let the light through. Definitely don't forget about window coverings. Obviously, there's little paper blinds and things you can get in the interim if you need them, but this is something to definitely make sure that you align in and around the time you're moving in. Now, the other thing, and of course it's a little more tech focused that we did do, is a security system install. I will say if you're curious about that, maybe feel free to DM me, reach out on one of the many different social media platforms that I'm on. You can contact me here, of course, in the contact information through YouTube, and I can tell you about what we did for that setup. For a brief overview, we went with Simply Safe and a custom spec setup, so probably over 50 items in the grand scheme of things, everything from window, door, motion sensors, interior, exterior cameras, the whole 9 yards. So, living in a new home and a new home community, what is that experience like? Well, first and foremost, it is probably worth a quick community update. So, this footage was filmed on Friday, June 6th. And at that point in the community, you could do your own math, but I can count about 36 homes here of the 58 total in our community that were under construction at this point. I believe at the time I'm recording this voiceover, we have somewhere around 10 available lots still in the neighborhood, and that does include the lot to the right side of our particular property. Needless to say, this development definitely feels a lot more like a community. We have a private Facebook group folks are active in, so certainly keep an eye out for one of those depending on where you're building and trying to join in and collaborate and discuss things with other neighbors or future neighbors. And just overall, I think it definitely does feel more like living in a community at this point. Our street has definitely filled out, again, save for the one house to the right of us. That includes a couple neighbors, not directly to the left, but slightly to the left of us, building 2 Versailles. And if you've been following this channel here for a bit, you would know that these other Versailles builds are in fact neighbors of ours. So yes, I'm covering the construction of a couple neighbors' homes here while getting to actually see the rest of the community being built around us. And it's an exciting process to see, but of course there are a couple caveats of living in a new home construction community. So just to talk through some of those, as I show some B-roll here around the community. One, of course, is the overall dirt, debris, and just the construction noise. The dirt and dust, everything, it's really inescapable. You will clean your front porch or your columns. Our house is white, and within a few days it gets orange again, and that is just the nature of the beast at this point. If you're someone that is pedantic about your car being clean or getting it washed, good luck. It will be in a perpetual state of dirty, probably for a number of months. Also, yes, construction noise. I would say this has been pretty manageable. Contractors will start early, i.e. sometimes as much as 7 in the morning. And yes, work on the weekends does happen, but usually by at least sundown or some point around night, maybe 5, 6, 7, that wraps up. Certainly haven't had anything egregious happen on that front, but yes, just bear in mind, be ready to hear nail guns, trucks beeping and backing up. That is all common. So if you're not a deep sleeper, might be worth getting an extra set of earplugs or something to help you get through that. Now with the dirt and debris, of course, trash is another thing. Big plus is the fact that you have dumpsters everywhere. So when moving, if you need to throw away some bulk trash, it doesn't get much easier than that. Of course, it does mean with wind and everything, you are likely to have trash blow out of dumpsters or blow off from different construction sites and onto your property. Not a huge deal. Occasionally I'll walk around and just pick some things, and that's what the dumpsters are for. And frankly, if it's a piece of material that probably belongs or came from an adjacent build site, I will pick it up and throw it right back over to the lot that it came from. Now, of course, another caveat to construction occurring around you is to just be mindful of, as they're working on different home sites and those adjacent ones to you, how that will impact your own. Case in point, the St. Lawrence to the left of us when we first had our lawn mowed. Shout out to Mom's Landscaping, who's been doing a great job. We had some strong rains that took place a few days prior, and overall, without the sod or seed or any of the landscaping being done in that property, left kind of the dividing line between our lots being fairly muddy and not so great. Needless to say, that first grass cut involved a mower getting stuck in the mud and having to be pulled out and ripping out some of our sod with it. Now, this wasn't a huge deal. Our landscaper placed some seed back in those affected areas, and it's pretty much grown back, even at this point, just within a few weeks. But something to watch out for if you're going to be doing your own mowing or hiring landscapers. These are gotchas to watch out for while construction is still taking place. And really, until you have homes on either side of you filled in and closed on and lived in, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge tending to some of these things. And also keep an eye out for dirt and debris even inside the house. I would say not just your own, but even that occurred during the build. Fun fact, we noticed a few dirt spots in our area between the garage and the powder room. Thought this was just some standard dirt we could wipe off, but a couple hours and some goo gone later realized that there was something much more serious that took place, and probably some contractor that stepped in mud and gum in their shoes and trapped it in a few more places than they even realized. Now, beyond this, again, probably just some other new build foibles and things. Of course, if you're living on a street, we were the first house that moved in to a street that hadn't existed prior to us. That means deliveries are going to be a challenge, at least initially. Now, there's other things you can do. You can get things delivered to the model home or adjacent streets or cross streets. In this case, my parents live a reasonable, drivable distance away, so any serious purchases that I want to make sure get delivered properly, I can send to them. This is one of those little initial challenges. It gets better in time for sure. We're finally getting accurate deliveries now for things to our address, but expect this to be a little bit of a hurdle, at least initially, especially if you're one of the first folks to move into your street. Mailbox access is another interesting one. I know at least most new communities here are using a shared mailbox concept. And because one of these mailboxes was apparently installed incorrectly, our post office decided to challenge the builder on that and basically decide to not deliver any mail to the entire portion of the community until that was corrected. So getting any snail mail at this point still involves an occasional drive to the post office to collect anything that's accumulated since the last time we've been there. Not a big deal, because most anything important we are doing like bills online, but needless to say, be aware these are things that can happen. So I did figure folks would be curious around the warranty coverage and what we've dealt with as far as any warranty requests go. And Ryan, like most new builders, does do a 1-2-10 policy, with that 1 representing what they cover in the first year, which is effectively anything and everything. And at this point, we have had 4 warranty requests that we put in. Fortunately, I would say all small things, and so really nothing that's been too concerning. One of those being the door to my study, which actually had a handle installed incorrectly, and kind of the opposite with the lock on the outside that I did reverse and fix myself, but the door was refusing to close properly, so we had a contractor come out, fix that to make sure it's shut correctly. The second one, and 2 of these actually do correspond to the caulking in the shower of the owner's bathroom. The first being the shower pan, which had caulking all around it that just seemed to flake off. I'm not sure if the contractor used a bad caulk when they installed it, or just didn't get to dry properly. Either way, separate punch-out guy came and fixed that. That was not a major issue. Not too long after, we noticed the same caulk was used on the little shower shelf, and that had peeled and flaked off as well there. So again, another quick fix. And then an interesting one we did notice was a slight leak from the tankless water heater. This was definitely of concern. And this was a slow drip down from one of the areas that are sealed in the unit where the power cord comes out. Now, we weren't sure as to what the cause for this was, but the plumbing contractor came out and found that, funny enough, the irrigation system was hitting the water heater exhaust, and that was getting back in and then unintentionally dripping down. So a quick seal of that and slight correction to the sprinkler head to make sure that that wasn't hitting that area, and we haven't had any issues thus far. Now, I will say that there was technically a 5th request I did put in, and that was for the roof. You might remember if you watched the week 13 or week 14 update videos on this channel, which if you haven't, I'll leave a link to above and in the description below that you can check out. We did have a blow off occur where we had a few areas, a large one in particular, where we lost a bunch of shingles. Now, this was repaired and patched, and the roof had seemed fine, but I was concerned as to the overall install of this just because our shingles were done in the dead of winter, likely in below freezing weather, when in fact, really the recommended temperature is supposed to be 40 degrees Fahrenheit or above. And overall, just inquiring about the non-matching patch because yes, at this point, it's pretty obvious They used a different batch or lot number with the patch of shingles that they added when they did fix it. Now, our warranty guy assured us that with the hotter temperatures we're now seeing in the spring, the roof should have had time to cure and have all the shingles adhere to one another. And he was able to confirm that the shingles were the correct make and model, but yes, likely from a different batch or lot number. Ryan didn't really seem too keen on doing anything to try to get that to match, and I understand it. It can be tough because even sometimes if you need to replace siding, sun and weather will do a fair amount to fade that or change that over time. So it is what it is. As long as our roof stays intact and we don't have any further blow-offs or issues there, I don't have any complaints. But of course, if anything does happen there, that would be big cause for concern and probably a reason to raise at least some more red flags with Ryan. Now, again, I mentioned those items. There were some other things that, I think are worth maybe thinking about or fixing yourself, and I did pursue a couple of those, whether from the reverse door handle on the first floor study to even one of these sensor-controlled Leviton switches. We noticed that the light in our closet was regularly coming on when we weren't going in there, and it's supposed to be a sensor-controlled light. And as it turns out, not air, but heat can actually be a trigger for setting off one of these sensor-controlled lights, and we did have an air supply right above it with vents aiming directly at it. Once I readjusted those vents, we had a light that was no longer turning itself on. The little joys and discoveries of home ownership, you might say. I will say we have noticed a couple more nail pops or pieces of missing paint or trim work, but bear in mind Ryan does do a one-time drywall and trim patch and fix across the entire house. That is definitely something you want to do at the 11-month mark. So keep tabs on that, take some pictures, make a little cheat sheet, and overall get that stuff taken care of at the very end. And of course, in our case, Ryan did provide some spare paint. We bought some painting accessories, so those small touch-ups are easy enough to make ourselves, at least where we can. So that is the 1-month update of building and now moving into and living in our Ryan home. Hopefully this video has been of some help to you. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if it has. Of course, if you haven't seen the rest of the build series, well, there are plenty, and I mean plenty of videos to go take a look through and watch. So be sure to check out that entire series and the playlist that I've made for that. And if you're also curious around other new build construction processes, be sure to follow the 2 Versailles build series that I'm now capturing here on the channel. There is, of course, a lot more to come with that. And with this St. Lawrence build, there are more videos to come with this. So we'll probably do, let's say, a 6-month and maybe a 1-year update on the process of everything here. And I have another of other videos I'm working on around the build, everything from the different options we picked in the home, the different questions we asked at our pre-construction meeting, and some other new build and maybe Ryan-related content that I'm going to cover here on the channel. So keep an eye out for that. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And for now, that's all I have to say. So thanks for watching.